representing people injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
It feels incredible.
This is Fish on First Live, presented by Berger and Hicks. I am Eli Sussman. You recognize me, but I think a reintroduction is overdue. I know how a lot of people operate. Some of you stick with us all year round for Miami Marlins coverage. There are others of you that maybe have not been on here since the Marlins got booted from the postseason in October. You may have checked out other things going on. So yeah, we have a new logo. New logos plural. This is, believe it or not, the first full season of Fish on First. Just got that started in late May of last year, but we are plenty experienced. It's a 15-person crew, and one thing we love to do before every single Marlins series opener is have these preview streams where we talk a little bit about the matchup going on, but it's more so just to hear from you guys as well. We stream on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook. You get comments live on all those, and we'll throw them up on the screen to be part of our discussion, everything going on here. Usually these are 1 hour. For opening day, it is 2 hours. It is twice as long, and it is going to kick my ass. I don't know how I'm going to get through the end of it, but I do have several of my staffers with me. I have rotation of guests coming in. We have 4 of them in total. We think there's going to be some overlap between them, but we have the big gun here right away. It's Peter Pratt from Locked On Marlins. Peter's been a great friend, and he's been a terrific content creator, and what he's done all year round to keep people engaged, to spark conversation, is something that I absolutely love. So for the first half of the show, we have Peter joining Nate and Alex and I to talk about things. How are things going over there for you, Pete?
Everything's good, guys. Looking forward. I mean, I'm pumped. It's opening day, and it feels like it's been such a long off season, hasn't it? Like, it's just been dragging. And as I talked about on my show yesterday, I've probably done nearly 100 episodes since the Marlins were bounced out of the postseason. And in all that time, I've covered every base possible, every potential trade, every potential free agent signing. And they end up with Tim Anderson, and we're ready to go. I think we're all ready to go on this off season for sure. And listen, it's 6 o'clock here, just after 6 p.m. So that's wine time in the UK for certain. So I'm ready to go.
Right. So the complication of doing an opening day stream, especially when the Marlins are at home, is that so many of my guys are at the game themselves and not on the stream. So we have Krutchik, who is stuck at work. We have Nate, who's on the other side of Florida. We have me, who's up in New York. And for anybody that doesn't know, you are across the ponds in the UK, where baseball is perhaps not at the forefront of people's minds the same way as it is in the US. What is the scene on the streets of Leeds today? Were people celebrating a holiday, or are you the only one that recognizes something different going on?
Yeah, the scene on the streets of Leeds, that is one way to put it. I mean, I've seen a lot of my friends today. I'm off work today as well. I had a tennis match. Put it this way, not one person has asked me about opening day at all from anyone other than the baseball, I guess the UK baseball crew. So the scene on the streets in Leeds is a rainy one. No one is aware of what is going on over in the States, and they're missing out. Fundamentally, they are missing out on all the action. This is one of the best days in the year for anyone. And no one knows it's happening here. Hopefully in a few years' time, we get to a point where that isn't the case. But for right now, it's still my little guilty pleasure, really, at this point, and hopefully it improves. So, yeah, let's check back in on that one, Eli, in a couple of years' time.
First pitch of this game, a little over 2 hours away, 4:10 p.m. Eastern time. We have a countdown clock on our homepage for anybody that is not familiar. I should have plugged this sooner. One of our big changes this offseason just 2 months ago is overhauling the template of our site, and we think it makes it much bigger, much better. And that opening day clock will lead you all the way to first pitch. We have Kevin Barral. We have Noah Berger on the scene reporting. We will bring them in for a press box report midway through the show. We have Donis Sosa taking photos for us as well. He is on the scene. And we have several other staffers there as fans. So we will incorporate them as the show goes on. Aside from the actual opening day stuff, I mean, no doubt a big storyline, something top of mind these last 24 hours is the fact that Jon Berti will not be on this team all of a sudden. The longest tenured Marlins hitter leading up to opening day, somebody that we had anticipated to at least make the roster and have a big role on it, got traded 24 hours ago to the Yankees in a 3-team deal. Nate, this I think the timing caught everybody a little by surprise. I mean, all things considered, he actually is a logical trade candidate, but the Marlins end up getting 2 prospects in return. Just your general reactions to all of this.
Yeah, when Craig broke it, I was very surprised, especially a little over 24 hours from opening day. But at first, I wasn't a fan. But you look at John Cruz, very young, 18, very high ceiling, at least from Yankees people. They like what they've seen from him. And Shane Sasaki, drafted in 2019, hasn't made it past high A ball, but his slash line's been pretty good. I think he's a 294 hitter through his time in the minors. But it is going to suck to see Berti gone. Like you said, been here since 2019, been through pretty much the majority of the rebuild, been through both playoff runs, and going to miss his versatility and speed. But I think in the long run, it's going to be a good move for the Marlins.
Krutchik, if your signal is going to hold up here, just your thoughts on the Berti trade as well. The fact that the Marlins dumping a really recognizable and versatile guy for young and inexperienced prospects right on the eve of the season getting going.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that stood out to me was how young these guys are, and they're not like can't miss. John Cruz has a couple of tools that folks the Marlins in the future. I gets called when does the at least he's going to be good. As for Berti, yeah, it stinks. You lose a lot of versatility with him in the field. But you kind of saw the writing on the wall that there was at least a competition with Berti when the Marlins brought in Nick Gordon and Vidal Brujan and Jonah Bride. I was a little surprised that Bride made the roster over Berti and that they wanted to get rid of Berti. But the writing was on the wall. The Marlins were at least open to the idea of Berti no longer being here. And then, of course, you have Xavier Edwards, who's dealing with a foot issue right now. But once he gets back online, I'm sure he's going to be one of those guys that might push someone else off the roster, one of the guys that I mentioned. So sad to see him go, but I understand why they did it.
Anything you want to add to that, Peter, about this whole shocking arrangement?
It's definitely a surprising one. Just the timing is surprising. Equally, for me, that the main surprise, just reflecting on this, was only a few weeks back, Jon Berti was the starting shortstop, penciled in anyway. Like, that's the messaging we were getting, was like, we're happy with Berti at shortstop. Then we're getting the kind of follow-up on that is, actually, we're going to like Berti at third this year, and maybe Berger's going to spend some time DHing. And so, for me, Berti, it looked like he was going to have a sizable role. And so for me, that's a little bit surprising. The thing with Tim Anderson, they've signed Tim Anderson, but listen, Tim Anderson last year, offensively, defensively, was absolutely terrible. And we're counting on the bounce back, but what happens if Tim Anderson is still terrible? And like, because I know we've got a plethora of infield options, but frankly, none of them are shortstops. None of them. And this is the thing for me that's caught me off guard. I get the view, it opens up playing time. But frankly, none of the other guys are shortstops. That's been the problem, hence why they went and got Tim Anderson. If Tim Anderson is terrible, then the Marlins are going to have a big, big problem at shortstop, in my opinion. So I'm surprised by it. I'm not an advocate for it. And equally, Bendix's presser after, for me, is really frustrating as a fan. I want this team to do well now. I'm really not thinking so much about 2030 or whatever year that we're projecting out for these dudes. I want the Marlins to do well now. The Marlins want me to invest my time for 162 games. They should invest in this product and not be trading away pretty much valuable assets. And Berti was the second highest WAR contributor last year. So for me, I'm not happy about this trade. I'm not happy about the timing of it. And I understand the spin we're getting, one eye to the now, one eye to the future. But come on, guys, it's the day before opening day. Let's put both eyes on the product now. Anyway, that's what I wanted to add on that topic.
Yeah, the timing was really weird. And that was the one thing that I failed to mention before. Yeah, the writing was on the wall with them signing all these other guys, but I don't know if all these other guys are actually better than Berti, especially not at shortstop specifically. Yeah, Jonah Bride can play a bunch of different positions, but I don't know if he can play it as well as Berti was able to. So, a little confused. I understand why they did it. I don't necessarily agree with it.
Yeah. And we have Sean Millerick hopping in on here. I called him the Trivia King. I could have called him something else because his trivia drives me crazy. We'll get to that later in the show on here. We just went around with Jon Berti trade reactions, so we'll hear yours as well, just including the timing, now the alternatives that get thrown in here, and the whole optics of dumping a guy that had been here so long in exchange for players that very clearly are not going to help the team in the majors this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can just call me Isaac Trivia Troll. I mean, I think that's my my function. But as far as Jon Berti goes, I definitely echo that the timing, that's the big negative. I mean, in terms of what their return was, I think I'd give the trade a B. It's possibly the right thing to do, but just horrible timing on the execution of it, as it is so many times with Marlins transactions. If nothing else, I think we do know who is the loudest voice in the room a couple of years ago in Tampa when they decided to trade their super utility player, Joey Wendell. This feels very much of a piece with that kind of transaction, possibly selling high on a player of that nature. And I expect us to see many other moves, like this during the Peter Bendix tenure. In terms of, the return, I think it's, nice to be on the other side of one of these deals where we, somewhere out there, I think we know that the Alex Carver of Yankees Twitter is out there pulling his hair out over the fact that how could you possibly get rid of a John Cruz for, in this kind of transaction? And so it's nice to get that kind of piece in return. But for 2024, feel terrible about this. It sends the wrong message. It's a clear demonstration that they're punting, which I think we've all kind of suspected, in some nature, that we're just treading water this season. If they'd done it a month ago, we could have spent a few weeks psyching ourselves up for believing that, maybe they'll sign JD Martinez, or maybe they'll sign JD Davis, or maybe they'll sign even Gio Urshela, add a little bit of, pop to the lineup. But the day before, it's like it's a slap to the face, a bit of cold water on the start to the season.
Yeah. And he just got the news. We had a man on the scene when Berti was delivered the news from Skip. And a few minutes later, that's when Mish broke the news about it. I think caught everybody a little bit off guard once that close to the year. You feel really bad for somebody that's a new father for the first time. I think his baby was born a month ago, like right before spring training. And obviously for someone in his situation, his career, they're planning to spend the next 6 months in Miami. And all of a sudden, even though it's a good opportunity for him with the Yankees, he's going to play a lot over there, at least early in the year at third base. Like, to have to uproot your whole family life just to make that change. That's like, I feel for him in that aspect too. But this is the Rays way. This is what the Rays had done with Peter Bendix, had seen it firsthand, making these unpopular moves. He is not afraid to admit when one deal is more towards the future than the present, as he did when he was speaking about this one. But I probably come out of here more understanding of it than a couple of you guys. I just think the value they got in return, in terms of just a value deal, it really was hard to not like it, because this John Cruz guy, we're going to update our top prospects list pretty soon. He's a top 15 guy in this Marlins system now. He has one of the higher ceilings of any hitter in this organization. It's not saying very much, unfortunately, like given the alternatives, but what he's shown at the lower levels while being very young, he's just 18 years old. He's going to be 18 throughout this whole summer coming up, and he'll be playing probably at low A this upcoming year. it's a really complete hitting profile that might not be that long until he is somebody that is nationally regarded as one of the more talented hitters that they have in there. And the second one's Shane Sasaki, somebody that also checks a lot of boxes, like not the same type of starter upside, but somebody that, he hits 300 with good on base skills in the minors in both high A and then a couple of years in a row now, where the production is impressive, even if the measurables don't jump out quite the same way. But it's hard to get past the fact that this does save the Marlins some money, like $3.5 million this upcoming year. I did a pod earlier in spring about how their payroll was even lower than it had been last year. And it went up with the Tim Anderson signing. And now it goes back down again, where it's almost level again. So I think we're going to have an updated article on the site tomorrow just about how where that payroll stands entering the year. They're going to be kind of where they always are, in the bottom third. Major league teams, 22nd, 23rd, maybe 24th in payroll. And that is, it's hard to swallow coming off a playoff berth. We do have this full roster, though, that we can dive into. I think most of these other things, what did you guys think? I guess I'll go to Peter on this. It was overshadowed by Berti, the Birch Smith acquisition. That was a strange one, where he was with the Rays and very abruptly, right before the season starts, even for someone who did not have a good spring training, comes out of nowhere to leapfrog some of the other relievers on this depth chart to steal a spot in here. What do you make of this?
Yeah, it wasn't quite emergency podcast territory, this deal, but it was close. If it would have happened a few months ago, this would absolutely have been emergency podcast territory on Locked On, no doubt. But yeah, Birch Smith, firstly, guys, please, I need some US people to tell me, is Birch a commonly known and utilized forename?
No.
I didn't believe so. No. It's the first time I've ever heard anyone called Birch. It feels like a misprint, to be honest with you. But nevertheless, for me, I'm stunned he's on the opening day roster, to be honest with you. And this, I tweeted about it earlier, that this to me is the first true Rays special, where there is a guy who's shown nothing in his major league career or in the spring right now. He makes the opening day roster, and if he's a stud, look back and it won't be the Rays anymore. It'll be the Marlins. You'll be waiting for the Marlins to do this, because this guy is the true Rays reliever. So I'm stunned he's on the roster. Maldonado, for me, I was like, he felt like the upside guy, to be honest with you. So I'm pretty surprised. But listen, I can't question anything to do with ex-Rays front office guys around relievers and turning them into studs. And so I'm just going to watch. I'm going to see how it goes. But yeah, interesting transaction. I think the other guys that have been had really good springs will be kind of looking around going, what the hell's just happened? And how am I not on the opening day roster, to be honest? So yeah, let's see what role Birch has. Clearly this bullpen is going to be heavily utilized very early. That's the way the rotation's set up. These guys are going to need to have a lot of innings and they're going to need to have a lot of body of work. So last year, the pen carried the team in the early part of the year. And I think the pen's going to need to carry the team again this year. And so pressure on Birch straight away. No gimmies. Pressure on Sixto. Pressure on Bender. Pressure on Tanner Scott as well, considering his spring. So there's a lot of pressure in this bullpen. See how it goes.
Yeah, Krutchik on the bullpen, they have a well-defined top two with Nardi and with Tanner Scott. But where do you see that hierarchy being right now? If we assume Birch Smith, respectfully, is all the way at the bottom there, how would you, who's the next man up in terms of Skip's circle of trust, do you think, when it gets past Nardi and Scott? When you need to bridge that gap. If these guys aren't going 7 innings, you're going to need to bridge that gap a little bit in those middle spots. Who would you trust, having been at several of these spring games? I think there's it's a different flavor for everybody in terms of where they look to outside those top two if they want important outs.
Yeah, I don't usually like to put too much expectation on a guy that's coming back from Tommy John surgery, hasn't pitched in a year and a half. But everything that I saw with my own 2 eyes and everything that I heard from Mel and Nardi and a couple of other pitchers says that Anthony Bender looks as good as ever. His slider looks as good as ever. He's impressed a lot of people during the spring. So I know he hasn't pitched in a year and a half, but you would not be able to guess that by looking at his bullpens and by looking at his in-game action this spring. I don't know if Skip is going to have a well-defined like seventh inning man, or if he's just going to go by whatever the lineup gives him in that seventh inning. But I can see him getting a bulk of that seventh inning stuff.
Yeah, I think I would have to agree. Either him, George Soriano had a dominant spring. If you look at the results in that aspect of it, I think he was somebody where when it got really late into spring, the question was like, do they regret having him focus as a traditional reliever? Like for somebody that showed some characteristics of being a starter last year, there was that question about what maybe they should have stretched him out just in case. And then all of a sudden you wonder what his role would be given the injuries that popped up over the last couple of weeks of it. But if he's only a reliever, then yeah, I think him and Bender have to be neck and neck in that regard. And we've talked plenty about Sixto on our platforms throughout this spring. But Nate, I just want to hear where you stand on Sixto's sensation, given what we saw of him so far. He's embracing being a reliever, but still, like the reps are really limited. And it wasn't that long ago where he was like a total afterthought heading into spring training. How much, what's the state of Sixto in your minds, and how much confidence they should have in him at this entering his first real games in 3.5 years?
Yeah, I mean, Sixto mania is definitely real. Definitely the headline of spring. Like you said, many of us thought he was an afterthought, thought he was pretty much gone, but came back this spring. I was worried about his velocity, but he got it back probably as he got ramped up. Then he hit 98 a few times, and his slider and off speed looks pretty good. And like you said, I think he only threw 9 innings this spring, but no runs. Looks pretty good. I don't think he's ready for that high leverage bullpen role yet, but if he throws in the 6th or 7th a few times, you might be able to see him get some of those high leverage moments. But I like that he's embracing the bullpen role because he's been a starter, top prospect starter his entire career. But if he can really embrace his role and get back to what he, not fully, but mostly what he used to be, I'm very excited, and it's very encouraging. And it's I'm happy for him. He worked a lot.
What about you, Sean, on Sixto? Where are you in your enthusiasm for him versus being scarred the last few years of him throwing from 45 feet and never getting to 60 feet 6 inches the way that he finally has recently? Gotta unmute yourself, Sean.
Okay.
There we go.
I'm still in shock, basically. I think that's probably the best way to put it. It's been Marlins Twitter's favorite drinking game. Every time he gets up to 60 feet, the fact that he's passed it and pitching in games and has not fallen apart yet. That's probably what I'm waiting for. I'm just waiting for the re-injury. But until it happens, as soon as he got back to hitting anything over 90 in velocity, I thought, well, his changeup's always been his bread and butter. And so you could be effective as a reliever, to that extent. And he's done that repetitively in spring against better competition as it's gone on. So I think it could end at any moment, and that's my expectation. But as long as he's here, I'm cautiously excited to see what he does as a reliever, or an opener at most is the only way I think he ever starts again. But I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm not putting any money on his health.
While I still have Crutchick here and have Nate here, and I'm stuck here the entire 2 hours for anybody that's curious about it, I want to get into our staff predictions that we put out earlier today. We went through this really quickly. I spent a couple of paragraphs kind of explaining my stance on it, but we had everybody involved with our operation. All 15 people give their record prediction and their team MVP pick, however you want to define that here. And so I had the Marlins going 74 and 88 this year, and that is kind of within the general range that the rest of us do. That it's more on the pessimistic side, as I usually am, but all of us, except for happy-go-lucky Noah Berger. All of us had them finishing with a worse record than 2023, finishing below 500. And Peter, you are no stranger to making predictions and make plenty of bold ones. As level-headed as you can be, how does these predictions from us compare to your own in terms of the overall team record and who we think are going to be the most important players in order for them to achieve that record?
I'm with you guys, to be honest with you. I'm normally on the optimistic side, and I think if I look back to all the seasons I followed the Marlins, I've probably had them as a 500 club every season, to be honest with you, which was very misplaced, I have to say. I was feeling pretty good about the club last year. I probably had them going over 500 at some point. Anyway, this year I'm down, actually. I don't see them being a 500 club, to be honest with you. And it's primarily just because we know, and this is what Sean touched on, really, that we know what's happening at this point. The restocking the farm, all this stuff, like, we know what's going to happen. Like, there's no Kim Ang all-in moves happening at all this year. And we look back to last year, there was a bit of luck, a bit of fortune, and then a Kim Ang, boost at the deadline that re-energized the club, because they were falling backwards at that point. There's going to be none of that. So if this club's out of it, the white flag's going to be raised, and there's 3-4 guys that are obviously going to be moved. Other guys will get opportunities, but for me, I'm in lockstep here with Carver, Lewis as well. I've got him at 71 wins, to be honest. So, wow. Yeah, I'm also in lockstep with Kev, Mike on the MVP. I think, irrespective of the Marlins' record, I think Jazz has an absolutely scorching year, and that 40-40 tracker is going to be in full flow this year. So I like Jazz to be the MVP. I think he'll be in the MVP conversation generally. It's all linked to health, but everyone's linked to health. There's a major problem in baseball right now, pitching wise. But listen, if Jazz is healthy, I think he's got 40-40 in him. He'll be in the mix. I don't think the Marlins will be in the mix generally. I think they're a below 500 club, unfortunately. And a few of the guys on opening day, the roster, for certain won't be here, in my opinion.
MVP, best player in the league.
Well, Nate was one of the several guys on our staff that also had Jazz as his MVP pick. Anything you want to add, Nate, on why you're so high on Jazz after a few years of being in and out of the lineup?
We've all seen it. It really just has to stay healthy. I mean, it's been the problem since he's trapped the lead. He has all the dynamic ability. Towards the end of the year last year when the Marlins needed him most, against the Braves, against the Mets, he got hot. If he just stays healthy, like I said, I could definitely see him hitting 30-30. I need Pete's 40-40 back this year. That tracker, I was following that all year. So hopefully we can get some real 40-40 action from Jazz this year. I'm hopeful.
And Krutchik, I want to savor every moment I have of you. I don't know when you have to go back to your regular duties on here. Anything you want to details that went into your 77 and 85 prediction and your hope and optimism about Luzardo having a huge year again?
Sure. Well, I'll start with Luzardo. Just simply enough, I think that the offense is not going to be good enough to where any one guy is going to stand out, except for Luis Arraez, which, admittedly, I just wanted to go a little bit against the grain there because I think that Arraez and Luzardo will both be equally important. So I just went with Luzardo. I think this is the year that he's going to put it all together. I know he looked pretty good last year, but even then, I don't think that he was actually as good as I think that he will be. And then because Sandy's not there, because Braxton's going to miss the first few starts, because Yuri's going to miss, probably at least a couple months. Edward Cabrera, not that I would have had it as my MVP anyway, but Edward Cabrera is going to be gone for at least a month. So I think that he'll be the one that stands out the most. As for the actual record, I don't think the team got a whole lot worse than they did last year. They're losing Sandy, which they were able to make the playoffs last year, even with him not performing that well. But then I go to the other side of the pendulum where I'm like, he did give them over 200 innings, and that is invaluable because I don't know where the team is going to find all those makeup innings, especially since all those pitchers that I just named are going to miss some time. So I kind of go back and forth with that. They do lose Soler, but they also get a full season of Jake Berger and Josh Bell. But then I also think, will Josh Bell play as well over 6 months as he did for 2 months last year? What I do think, and this one I'm consistent on, and this one I wholeheartedly believe, I think the floor of this 40-man roster is a lot better. There's guys in the minor leagues, Dane Myers, chief among them, that I would have been comfortable bringing onto the active opening day roster. It's been a long time since I have genuinely felt like an offensive player has been gypped from the opening day roster. Usually, I can't even find 13 position players that deserve to be on this roster. Now, there's like a couple down there that I would feel comfortable bringing up. So I think the floor got higher. So I think that's where my confidence lies. And I think similarly, the lineup has also gotten deeper.
Okay, and we'll go back to back with the predictions here, as many regulars of the show know. But at the end of the show, we're going to do prediction time for the whole group. But while you're on here, we want to make sure that you get yours in. And I want to show off my new prediction time background. It's a little fancier than before on here as well. So you know how this works, Krutchik. It's a 4-game series. Want to know how many games the Marlins are going to win and who is going to be your series MVP pick. It could come from either team.
Sure. So I think that the series will be tied 2-2. And I think the MVP will be Jesus Luzardo. I think he's going to go out there and pitch really well today in front of his hometown fans. He's got 65 people there he said he left tickets for. So I'm going to go with Luzardo.
Awesome. So we will log that. Our staff, they all send their stuff in, whether they're on the stream or not. Our guests all got their chance to put in their predictions. Our super subs, fishonfirst.com/subscriptions to become a paid super subscriber. This is our best day of the year in terms of getting people to pay up for this kind of stuff. So if you haven't done so already, we encourage you to do so. As little as $4 a month, you could go to the site. I think the link is also in the description of this video, especially if you're on YouTube. So yeah, we welcome people in there as well, because we're going to be keeping track of that all season long. And a big prize for the winner of prediction time at the end of the 2024 season. We have another one of our guests pulling up right on time to give us a Pirates perspective on this first series of the year. It is Austin. I did not get a chance ahead of time to confirm the pronunciation of his last name. So fill us in, Austin. Give us a little intro in terms of how it is that you have learned so much about the Pirates and where it is that you cover the Pirates.
Yeah, guys. Hello. Thanks for having me. Austin Bechtold is my name. I'm in Pittsburgh. I work at the sports radio station here, 93.7 The Fan. Also, I cover the team for SB Nation's Bucks Dugout. So I'm as pumped as probably you guys are, ready to go in T-minus under 2 hours here. Excited for some Bucko baseball.
Awesome. Very interesting setup in that these teams finish the last regular season against each other, and then they open up the next one against each other. It's the first time ever that the Marlins and Pirates have played each other in the opening series of a season. Just give us a general overview about what the Pirates are, what fans are expecting the Pirates to do this year, and where like the organization stands, because they had an interesting year last year. They were the talk of the National League the first month of the season. Incredible performance, kind of went to a free fall for a couple months, and then quietly the second half of the year they played right around 500 the rest of the year. A lot of their overall stats from last season aren't all that different from what the Marlins put up when the Marlins made it to the playoffs. So how are people feeling about it? How do you think this team compares to the 2023 version?
Well, when you start off 20-8 after losing 100 games in back-to-back seasons, it's definitely going to put people on notice. There was talk of playoffs, and this is the year maybe that they finally get back since 2015. And of course, that ended up not being the case. The difference really ended up being in this team is they had a huge lull in the middle of May, end of May. June was disastrous. And things really started to shift in the middle of July. So they called up their top prospects. Henry Davis, who was the first overall pick in 21's draft. Andy Rodriguez, a catcher who's out all this year with Tommy John surgery, hurt his elbow and playing winter ball. They called up a lot of their top guys. Peguero's an infielder who's starting in the minors this year. Jared Triolo is a guy who you will see at second base today. Kind of a utility player. He's played a lot of second base. Actually won a minor league Gold Glove at third. Bringing those guys up changed a lot of things. What was part of that 20-8 start for only 9 games was O'Neal Cruz, who is batting 6 for the Pirates today. Expect him to bat leadoff a lot for the Bucks. He is potentially going to be the talk of Major League Baseball this year if he performs up to the potential that he has. He hasn't played 100 games yet, but he hit 7 home runs in spring training and is a type of guy who can hit the ball 475 feet with ease. And it sounds like it's something that's far-fetched, but it's truly the case. And I think the Pirates were lacking that in terms of power, in terms of just flair and people paying attention to the Pirates. Andrew McCutchen was able to do that. Coming back to the Pirates after being gone for 5 years. It was great for the locker room, the clubhouse, just in general. But when I think about last year's Pirates season, it really was ushering out, it was guys who were kind of showing up and guys that were getting traded in the middle of the season that were added as additions at the beginning of the year. This year's team, the expectations are so much different. And it's because those guys have half a season under their belt. They have a full off season of being major league players like Davis, like Triolo, like some of the other guys that I had mentioned. Plus, when Mitch Keller goes to an All-Star game, David Bednar goes to back-to-back All-Star games, and you give Keller a 5-year, $77 million deal, you expect him to be the front-end guy in the rotation like we've seen because Keller starts today. If Mitch Keller about 2 years ago would not have had the start of the season that he had, or maybe the end of the season that he had, he was going to either be DFA'd or traded. He was in the bullpen. It was a disaster. Everybody was pretty much saying about to give up on Mitch Keller, kind of like how Tyler Glasnow ended up being for the Pirates. And I know this ended up being a long-winded answer, but Mitch Keller is part of the reason why the Pirates are where they are right now and why he is getting, as you can see right there, the leader of the starting rotation with Keller, Gonzalez, Jared Jones. We can go into him in a little bit as well. Martin Perez, and everyone's favorite. He's escaping my mind. I spoke on him so much today. Bailey Falter, who will not be fun. The Marlins should have a great time with him on Sunday.
Mm-hmm. I remember Bailey Falter from his Phillies days. Yeah, I want to get into another starting pitching topic that the Marlins community had very polarizing opinions about. I want to get to Peter's opinion on this first. The Edward Cabrera trade rumors that, per multiple reports, those got extremely advanced and very close to leading to a deal. Marlins did not end up making a significant trade with their starting pitchers, and I guess it turned out somewhat for the better, even though inconveniently, Edward is now one of those injured pitchers right now who's not going to be available for the first few weeks of the season. But where did you stand on that, Peter, about the possibility of moving him at this stage of his career? And given, I guess, what was the rumored potential package that the Marlins might get in return, I forget exactly where you stood on whether you were pro making that move or whether you thought Eddie needs a little bit more time to harness his immense potential.
Yeah, for sure. This is one of the storylines, wasn't it, of the Marlins offseason, I guess, and it was driven by Pirates Twitter for once. Like there was this kind of Pirates Twitter chaos ensuing. Pirates were getting very excited on Twitter about the prospect of getting Edward Cabrera because, and to your question, Eli, like where did I stand on this? I was very much like what the hell are the Marlins doing? Why would they trade this young, controllable dude that you go to Savant and it is red galore apart from the clear one deficiency? And we then think back, well, we have a history of being able to fix guys that walk everyone. I appreciate Eddie's pretty extreme in that area, but I was absolutely like, it didn't make sense. Like the Rays model is not to trade a dude with 5 years of control that you could make a minor tweak, and next thing is you've got a Cy Young potential profile there. So, I mean, it was fun. The conversations were fun. I was definitely in the camp of this doesn't make sense, considering the years of club control primarily. And it felt like a sell low. Whether Eddie Cabrera actually ends up delivering on all of this potential that we've spoken about for years, who knows? It's kind of in his hands, to be honest. Literally is in his hands, but it kind of is up to him how good Eddie Cabrera can be, in my opinion. And for me, it felt the wrong time to move him now, considering those aspects. I can't remember the names of the players specifically with the Pirates, but I remember looking at them, and I'm nowhere near a prospect guy, as everyone on this knows for certain. But the ones that were being talked about, I was absolutely not blown away by any of them. It felt like truly mid, and I was like, listen, I want the upside of Eddie Cabrera rather than the mid prospects that like could maybe play shortstop but no stick or something like that. Can't remember the guys, but yeah, I was in the camp of this is fun because it was an off season of pain and limited action. But after the fun subsided, I was like, I really don't want to go down this pathway.
Yeah, but Austin, from your perspective, at least from what we could see, it did seem like Pirates fan base in general was largely pushing for this outside of Keller, all the other questions about their rotation and this opportunity to acquire a very controllable, very talented, relatively young guy who apparently would not have commanded any of the very top guys in the Pirates system. How enthusiastic were you about the possibility of them getting him when these rumors were kind of at their peak in, I think, early February is when they were really bubbling?
You're not interested in a super utility guy in Ji-Hwan Bae who steals a lot of bases, or Braxton Ashcraft who's also hurt right now? Guys, when I was hearing some of these things, I was wondering, all right, what's the return going to be? Are they going to have to give up one of these infielders who potentially could start at second, first, whatever? I was kind of like you guys, surprised and thinking that there would have to be more to make a deal done. It was pushed by Pirates Twitter a lot. Now, there was a lot of truth to everything that was reported and that was said, that this thing could have happened, at least from people that I had talked to that had heard about the conversations. The fact that it didn't, one of the biggest parts of the Pirates offseason was to add a big-time starting pitcher. Big time was Cabrera. That probably would be the Pirates 3 right now when he's all said and done healthy with Mitch Keller and eventually Paul Skeens. So, yeah, I would have liked to have seen it happen, especially at the price, because I feel like the Pirates would have ripped off the Marlins a little bit. But Braxton Ashcraft's one of the guys who were thrown around in that discussion. Ji-Hwan Bae is nothing more than a utility guy who could play center field. Good defender in center, good defender at short, could play second as well. That's about it, though. He's not a starter in the major leagues. Braxton Ashcraft is probably going to be a reliever, I would think. Has battled some injuries, is kind of banged up right now too. I don't remember who the third name was that was publicly put out there as well. But yeah, I mean, I would have liked to have seen it happen from a Pirates perspective. It sucks to see that Cabrera is hurt, but from a Marlins perspective, I think you guys probably made out better on no deal happening than a deal at all.
Yeah, we'll see how it comes back from this shoulder impingement. He just threw on Tuesday in an inter-squad game against some live batters. He looked pretty decent from what we were able to see on site. He'll presumably go out for a rehab assignment soon, if not next week, then the following week, and should be back in the rotation for sure before the end of April. And we'll see how he builds upon that. I have always been, not always, but I'd say the last year and a half, I've been the lower guy on Edward. I just don't trust him to stay healthy. He has had, including this shoulder issue, he's had a litany of issues, and he's somebody who's mechanically is just not consistent at all. He's, I've called him this before, respectfully. He's a clumsy athlete out there, not really a graceful one. And I really question exactly whether he could be certainly very effective as a reliever long-term, but I do wonder whether there comes a point where every single time that they try to stretch him out as a starter, something goes awry there, and they eventually make that change anyway. That being said, relatively young, and such a deep pitch mix that he has. And there were flashes, not so much last year, but certainly the year before in 2022, where you could see a lot of that potential kind of coalescing coming together with him. And as it turns out, the Marlins are going to need him, I think, at some point, because the guys holding down rotation spots right now are not ones that we expect to stick in the rotation for the entire year. AJ Puck he's never been a starter in the majors. Ryan Weathers has never been an effective pitcher in the majors. Trevor Rogers himself has questions about both his durability and his effectiveness as well. So they're going to need Edward starts at some point. Whether or not they're effective or how many they'll get from him is a big question. But I think I do agree with you, Austin, that it maybe, I don't know if they dodged a bullet, but I think all things considered, this gives them a slightly better chance of reaching their goals if he comes back and if he's a good version of himself on that. I also wanted to check in on another trade that these teams actually did make. It's not been a couple of years ago, but the Jacob Stallings era in Miami is gracefully over. He's one of several guys that, again, with all due respect, was an addition by subtraction this offseason, where the Marlins non-tendered him. They went out and they got Christian Bethancourt as their new catcher. It's still like not a position of strength, but Stallings was so much less than the player that he was hyped up to be. The one that he was in 2021, his last year with Pittsburgh, coming over to the Marlins. Not only did the hitting go down the drain, but even his defense really slipped quite a bit on that one. For the guys that are still in Pittsburgh from that side of the deal, Kyle Nicholas, who got a cup of coffee in the majors last year, and from Connor Scott, who was a former Marlins first-round draft pick there, are those guys could they have any sort of significant impact on the Pirates during the course of the season?
Nicholas, maybe. Scott, no. Connor Scott will probably start in Double-A again. He's kind of just been wavering and teetering there the entire time that he's been in the Pirates organization. Don't know how much movement it's going to be there. Kyle Nicholas is interesting because he was a starter. They've tried to use him a little bit as a reliever. I could see him in a relief role, but he's not done well, especially spring training wasn't very good. And when he came up to the Pirates, he's got decent stuff. He's got some good movement on his off-speed pitches. But the production and the results just are not there. So is there a possibility that he figures it out in the minor leagues this year? Yes. The ERA, which is always not the end-all, be-all now, as we're told in baseball, had just not been good. The walks have been okay. Zach Thompson was a part of that deal. He's been gone. That was basically a 6-month trial run and, a relationship that did not last very long. Jacob Stallings was a guy who, when he was sent over, the Pirates were kind of selling high to Miami. He was a defensive guy who didn't really hit much. I was never really high on him because he didn't really hit. And his dad used to be the head coach at Pitt basketball, and they won no games in the ACC one year. So that was always fun to have that family legacy in Pittsburgh. So I'm not that surprised seeing Stallings struggle in Miami. I think he had like a decent amount of success at times, but he's not the JT Realmuto in the NL East. He's not what we in Pittsburgh hope Henry Davis will become. He's just kind of a guy who's a backup, a long-term backup, a solid defensive catcher, but he's never going to be your number one.
Yes. I would say that his biggest accomplishment as a Marlin was being Sandy Alcantara's personal catcher in 2022. He got every single pitch that Sandy threw on his way to winning the NL Cy Young. And then, as it turned out, that magic was not there last year. Maybe it was something more than Stallings doing it himself. Like, there was a lot more going on that Stallings had a little too much credit in 2022. And then when things turned for Sandy and for Stallings last year, his role pretty quickly diminished, and it was clear that they were heading in this direction. It's time to take a look at the lineups for opening day for the very first game between these two teams. I think I have it somewhere in here. This is how these guys are starting out here in 2024. Mitch Keller, Jesus Luzardo, that has been locked in for several weeks at this point. And then we have here the lineups that these teams are looking at. Nate, starting with you, I guess on the Marlins side, any surprises, anything that you like or dislike? It's kind of a similar lineup to what we saw at times during spring training, but we didn't know exactly how it was going to line up in this first game. So how does this compare to what you expected to see coming out of camp?
Yeah, a few of my takeaways. I wrote about Nick Gordon last week. He's had a very impressive spring. Mentioned how he could, slide around in the infield, but I really wanted to see him start in left field, and he got the start. I'm very excited about that. No Avi Garcia, which is always a good sign. The 3-4-5 of De La Cruz, Jazz, and Berger I like a lot, especially with Rising Bell in front of them. And then, Fortes keeping the battery between him and Luzardo. But overall, I like this lineup a lot.
And what about you, Sean? Haven't heard from you in a while. Same thing. What did you expect to see for this game? And are you confident at all that this could be not the worst run-scoring team in the National League like it was last year?
Well, I mean, going back to the absence of Stallings, I think there's definitely that, as you said, the addition by subtraction and not having but the worst offensively producing catcher and shortstop on the roster. So that covers the departure of Joey Wendell as well. So that gives me some reason for hope. I guess the thing that surprised me the most was it never really occurred to me the DLC hitting third, but I also don't, after thinking about it for a moment, I'm not necessarily sure what I would have done differently, at least off of the spring. Jake Berger is my season MVP pick, but after strikeout rate kind of climbed back up into spring, I feel like maybe he's got to ease his way into that spot. But that probably would have been the only thing that I would have done differently. Otherwise, this is the lineup you want to see, as it was noted. No Avi, that's key. And I think that would have been a tough pill for the fans to swallow on opening day. I'll be interested to see when he gets into the lineup over the course of the weekend. But no, this is what I expected. I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah, I know that Skip really focuses on this mixing up, or I should say separating the righties and the lefties. All the way from 2 through 9, it is Bell's going to hit lefty today, so it's lefty, righty, lefty, righty, lefty, righty, lefty, righty. And then Arise at the top. Arise he is like, might as well consider him ambidextrous, because he hits just as well against lefties as he does against righties anyway in here. So I think that was a factor here. On the Pirates side, Austin, is there anything surprising to you about this, or anything that jumps out to you that you're excited about or concerned about?
I'm surprised Connor Joe is going to be the first batter of the Pirates 2024 season. I don't understand that. Jack Sawinski is going to be the Pirates' everyday left fielder, with Michael A. Taylor signing as a free agent. He'll be in center, and Brian Reynolds is going to play right. He played all left last year and the year before that. O'Neal Cruz was batting leadoff pretty much all of spring training, and it's a place where the Pirates have liked him at. I think this is just because there's a lefty and Luzardo on the mound, and we're going to see it a lot in this series with the number of lefties that the Marlins are throwing out there. Other than that, I mean, Reynolds and Hayes has been the 2-3 that, dating back to last year, was pretty similar. Same thing in all of spring training. Henry Davis fifth is a little interesting because his bat's starting to play really well. Hit a bunch of home runs in spring training. Was, I think, the Pirates' best player in terms of driving in runs. Not surprised Michael A. Taylor's ninth, flipping the lineup around. Rowdy Tellez is a lefty batting eighth. I expected Connor Joe to play left and to play at first, rather, with Rowdy Tellez on the bench, because he's a left-handed bat, and keep Sawinski in there because he hit 26 home runs for the Buccos last year. I like the length of the lineup, and let's just say Sawinski's in there every day instead of Joe, and you're facing a righty. I mean, this is the best Pirates lineup that Derek Shelton and Ben Cherington have had in the organization since they took over in end of 2019 or so, by far. I mean, there were lineups with like guys like Hoy Park and name random catchers, and they were probably on the Pirates roster. I mean, guys who are not even in baseball anymore. 1 through 9. The Pirates probably had 4 or 5 of them. It was bad. And this is a lineup with Reynolds, who's got the biggest contract in Pirates history, Gold Glover Cabrera Hayes, Andrew McCutchen speaks for himself, 1-1 Henry Davis, potential 30-30 guy in O'Neal Cruz, and then Jack Sawinski hit 26 bombs last year. There's a lot of length in the lineup.
And this is Kevin, our reporter at Lone Depot Park today, saying that Connor Joe and BP at least put on a show out there. So we'll see how that translates to the actual game. A couple more things for you, Austin, before we get you out of here. That I've been getting a lot of interesting opinions on the fact that the Marlins are going with a mostly lefty starting rotation to start the year, including this entire series, 4 games in a row. It's 4 lefties with Luzardo, then Puck, then Weathers, then Rogers in there. It's pretty unusual. We looked at the history of it. It doesn't happen very often. It really has never happened. The Marlins, at least themselves, have like never stuck with a mostly lefty rotation for more than, a couple turns at the time in that. So I guess, how do you feel about like that general concept? And also from the Pirates' perspective, is that going to help them or hurt them that they're going to be facing vast majority of the time going up against lefties?
General concept, we don't see it very often just because of the amount of right-handed pitchers that there are, and there's not as many lefties in the world. So that's kind of a part of it. I'd like to think that from a Pirates perspective, it would hurt rather than help. Brian Reynolds is a switch hitter, but he's better batting lefty than he is batting righty. It's going to help Connor Joe and Andrew McCutchen and Cabrera Hayes, that's for sure. But it's going to hurt O'Neal Cruz, who doesn't hit lefties very well. And it's going to hurt Jack Sawinski, who will swing and miss at pretty much anything if you give him an off-speed pitch that runs away from him. Strikeouts have been a major concern for him. So, yeah, Pirates fare better against righties. The Pirates, oddly enough, last year were so good against star pitchers. They'd crush Zach Gallen. They would beat up on whoever the Cardinals were throwing out there as a star. They'd crush Marcus Stroman. And then you'd throw quad A starting pitcher out there who probably will throw 5 more games in his life in the major leagues, and he'd throw 5 scoreless. So we'll see what happens. Maybe a couple of the guys who've been in the bullpen for the Marlins as of late, wasn't Puck in the bullpen last year and Weathers spent some time there, or Rogers, one of the two. I would say that the Miami win probability for that last game with Trevor Rogers against Bailey Falter is probably the biggest game. I would say it's probably going to be a 2-2 series. I would circle that one, though, as the most likely one that the Marlins could win. Opening day with the Aces on the mound is always a crapshoot. You never know what's going to happen. It's probably going to be a 4-3 game today with a run in the 8th inning or something off a bullpen arm. I like, though, probably going up against a righty for the Pirates. I would say the Marlins have the edge in terms of the rotation that's being thrown out there this week.
Peter, I'm curious where you stand from the non-Luzardo starters. Which of these guys, at least in the initial rotation, we can include Max Meyer in there as well, between Puck, Weathers, Rogers, Meyer, which of them is the deputy stud, the number 2 guy? So you, the one that until the rest of those guys come back from the IL, which one are you highest on at this stage?
I mean, how many aces can one team have is the question there. There's so many. Great question. Who is the deputy stud? I mean, listen, the way the Marlins have lined him up, they seem to be saying that AJ Puck is, the deputy assistant stud at this point. Yeah. And what we saw in spring, I tend to agree. What we've seen from Weathers in the major leagues has not been that encouraging. Trevor Rogers was amazing in 2020, but man, oh man, that feels like that was a long time ago. And Max Meyer, I mean, we've seen 5 innings. So yeah. Puck for me is the number 2 at this point. His performance in spring truly blew me away, to be honest with you. Like his ability to transition and the repertoire that he demonstrated was mind-blowing, to be honest with you. And it just shows you how differently mentally he pitched last year, with leverage in those leverage innings and pitching within himself. Like he had so much that he could give in his repertoire, but he just didn't. He just wanted to make sure I'm only throwing my best pitches and that's it. So for me, with Puck, I'm super excited to see what we get here, to be honest with you. And all of a sudden, he's like the kind of sleeper, dreamy guy now in the rotation that, again, the same old thing. Is he healthy? Can they keep him healthy? It's the same old thing with these guys. But yeah, for me, he's the kind of X factor beyond Luzardo at this point.
Yeah, we are flying by on here, thankfully for me. Almost an hour, almost halfway through, almost at halftime of the show. And that means that we do flipped fish for Austin, who may not be familiar, or Peter. Almost every single series preview show, we choose a player who played for both the Marlins and their opponent during their career. It's usually a retired player. In this case, it definitely is a retired player. And we give our audience and our panelists a few seconds to think over who it might be, just based on some clues from their baseball reference page. And we'll do it again. This is a very easy one. I'm going to tell you right now, don't overthink this one. It's going to be really easy. Here's what I'm giving you so far, or a former Marlin and a Pirate guy, where you have both the positions he played, a switch hitter, who at this stage he's been retired for over 20 years now, but a 30 WAR career that he had nearly 300 home runs. We're going to go to our break, just 30-ish seconds for you to ponder it over. When we get back, we'll hear from what Austin has to think about that. We'll get Austin's series predictions before he gets out of here. And then we'll get to the rest of our show here on FOF Live, presented by Berger and Hicks. Please stick with us.
We have been representing people injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
All right. Flipped Fish here on FOF Live. We'll give our newest guest an opportunity to solve this one himself right here. Who do you think it is, Austin?
Oh, I don't think I'm going to be the one doing the solving of this.
No. Got you stumped on this. Well, I know that Sean knows it. If anybody in the comments knows it is absolutely not Gabby Sanchez. We were thinking of doing Gabby Sanchez.
That was going to be my first guess, to be honest.
No, but 30 wins above replacement. No, Gabby did not play quite this long. He fizzled out pretty quickly early in his career. I'll give it like 10 more seconds in the chat before Sean kind of ruins it on here. This is supposed to be an easy one. It's going to get harder in most of our streams, just so like the audience is aware on this. You guys need to up your game on here. Tell everybody, Sean, who is this mystery flipped fish player? Gotta unmute yourself.
Unmute. In time. 1997 World Series champion Bobby Bonilla is the answer.
How did I not know that? I forgot he played for Miami.
1 year and maybe like a month.
This is truly overwhelming. I really don't know what to say.
I don't get to use that very much, so it was important for me to pick him here for this one here. Yeah, here on FOF Live, just past the top of the hour. First pitch at 4:10 p.m. Eastern Time. Austin has been very gracious with his time and his insights. So before he gets out of here as well, we want to get his series prediction time coming early right here. How it works, Austin, pretty simple. Just how many games you think the Pirates are going to win out of 4, and who is your series MVP pick? It could be from either the Marlins or the Pirates.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Sorry about that. Somebody jumped in here from the station right away and said my name. I'm going to say that the series is going to go 2-2. Pirates will win 2 games. The Marlins will win 2 games. And the MVP is going to be Henry Davis of the Pirates at catcher. He's going to catch at least 2 out of the 4 games, maybe even 3 out of the 4. And he's going to have 5 RBIs in the series for the Pirates. It might be a bold prediction. Well, it is a bold prediction, but I think that he needs to be a star for the Buccos. Also, O'Neal Cruz will throw it out there as well, potentially. But Henry Davis, there's just something in the water right now that Davis is feeling. He's swinging a hot bat, and it's going to carry over from spring.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing that play out with him. He was named that as the Marlins desperately look for their own catcher solution and know that they're not going to be able to sign a free agent. He is one of those trade candidates that has been brought up quite a bit, but the Pirates, as you said, they need him a whole lot this year in particular with ND out with his elbow thing. So, yeah, I'm pretty fearful of what he could potentially do in this series, especially going up against all those lefties. So, yeah, thanks a lot, Austin. And one more series between these teams later in the year. We may have you on back for that, but I'm sure we'll be following the rest of your stuff over there. This Pirates team that I would not be surprised if they're just as competitive as the Marlins over the course of the season, maybe even a little bit better if things break right for them.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. Appreciate you guys having me on. Excited to see what the Marlins do. Jazz Chisholm and Berger are 2 guys that they're just fun to watch for me. So I'm excited to see how the Marlins season progresses out and plays out this entire year. And enjoy opening day, boys. It's exciting.
You too. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks, guys.
We're about to go to our press box report. What's your status, Peter? You only committed to a single hour on here. Do you want to get in your predictions before you head out, or are you going to stick around a little bit longer to hear from Kevin and Noah?
I need to hear from them guys, so I've got more time. So get me into that press box, baby.
So let's do the first Marlins press box report of 2024. Oh boy, they are too excited for it. They're never a great sign when they have these big smiles on their faces that they're up to something here. And Ethan Badowski, Just Baseball, former fish striper. He's in the press box. About as busy. Guys, is it as busy as the press box ever gets? Is it more than you're accustomed to seeing for a typical Marlins series?
100%. Decent amount of fans here, a lot of media. But again, it's opening day, so all expected. Been a great time. Spoke to Skip. I spoke to Josh Feld, Nick Gordon. Those guys are pumped. Spoke to newly called up Jonah Bride, who was in Jacksonville and got the call a couple days ago as he was playing Call of Duty. He skipped the call the first time, didn't realize it was the Marlins. Got it the second time. So aside from that, a lot to be excited about. It's a great time here, and I think you had the voice memo, but the vibes are high. So I'll say it again.
Hold on, let me get the audio for that now that you brought it up.
The vibes are high, and that's the way I would put it.
And Noah, everything going well so far? I heard I imagine you're very disappointed with the news that the roof is going to be closed. What is as our meteorologist, at least for the time being, I don't know if you're going to stay that way, but entering the season as our Fish on First meteorologist, what happens? How is it that we reached this point where they had to unfortunately close the roof despite some initial optimism that they could play with it open?
So the rain chance became too high for them to keep the roof open, so they had to keep it closed. I was actually just speaking to the Navy spotter who radios to the pilots when to do it to time it well for the flyover. And he's like, I think I'm just gonna have to text him because the radio's not gonna work with the roof closed, and we're just gonna have to hear the planes and not see them. It's gonna be very awkward. But I will say that Brewers last year had a flyover with a roof closed on opening day, and they won the division. So I think it's a good sign. This is the eternal optimist in me. Like, I'm the only one that thought the Marlins are going to win 84 games this season. But yeah, it's exciting. It's opening day is always exciting. Got to see guys that are having their first opening day. Brian Hoeing, Tanner Scott's having his fifth, but he's still like, it's still exciting for me. And I'm like, you can get excited. He's like, sometimes. Always the veterans, just everything. Luis Arias today got a bat in the mail that the barrel of it was fully engraved with a silhouette of him, the Marlins, and the Twins, and it's back-to-back batting titles, like with the stats and everything. The glass case for it was broken, and he was very upset, but it was very cool to see him take that bat out. I tried to get pictures of it. We had to get out of the press. We had to get out of the clubhouse. But look for that when the Marlins send that out, because it looked really cool.
For anybody that is not familiar, Noah, could you enlighten our audience about Skip and the fact that on just a couple days prior to the start of the season, switching his uniform number in honor of his dad? Just walk people through. And I don't know if he had anything additional perhaps to say about that prior to the game, but he did post this on Instagram. So if you could just get people caught up on what Skip was thinking with that change to number 45.
So I was very thankful to Skip for trusting me with sharing the news originally about why he did it. If people don't know, his father unfortunately passed away last week. On the day of the split squad doubleheader, that's why he didn't do post-game media availability. He went out for the funeral. The funeral was on Monday. His father wore the number 45 when he played high school football. So Skip decided that to honor him, he's going to wear it this season. It's interesting because Skip normally doesn't wear a uniform top when he's managing the game. He usually wears a hoodie or a pullover. But this year specifically, he's going to wear the uniform with the number 45 for the first game of every series to honor his father. And I think that's a very sweet gesture for him to do for his father in his memory.
Yeah. Right before you guys hopped on, we took a look at the lineups, but I might as well throw it up one more time. I mean, you guys are aware of it, but I'm just curious for Kevin to get your take on it, because we didn't have like an exact idea about who would be in this lineup. We had a general idea, but they ended up going maybe in a slightly different direction, or at least the order a little bit different than perhaps may have been projected. Anything particular that you like or dislike about this very first game and the 9 guys that Skip is riding with behind Luzardo?
Yeah, honestly, I did not expect to see Nick Gordon in the lineup on opening day. Nothing against him. Just, from what it looked like, it would be DLC in left field with Avi as the DH. That isn't the case. He is now on the bench for opening day. But again, that's really it. Tim Anderson at the 7th spot. I don't think we saw that during the spring. I'm excited to see how DLC looks in that 3rd spot in the lineup. I would have liked to see Jazz in the 5 spot, but again, just from what I've seen during spring, would have liked to see that. But I mean, when you have Tim Anderson at the 7th spot in your lineup, it shows how much the depth really is going to play for the Marlins today. And again, I mean, this is really similar lineup to what we saw last season. Excited to see what Josh Bell brings to the table. He's real pumped to play in Miami. Really likes the corners, the gaps, and aside from that, Jake Bergen, that 5 spot, I'm really excited. Skip did really talk about having Jesus towards the bottom of the lineup. I think Peter Bendix mentioned that as well. So it's an interesting lineup. This is honestly what I would have preferred over having Avi as the DH. I wanted to see Nick Gordon in there. He's a great defender, all 3 outfield spots, and he's going to play left field tonight. I'd much rather have him on the field than Brian De La Cruz.
I agree with you on both of those fronts. Nothing more to say on that. But from Nate and Peter and Sean, is there anything else you want to, any firsthand insight you want from our guys that you haven't already gotten about what it's like around there entering today, and anything else that they could help us with?
I just want to confirm the state of the vibes. Kevin, could you touch on that?
I mean, they're going to be a little higher later, but once we get more people in the ballpark, it's all right now. I mean, it looks like your typical game. But Isaac, if you go on Twitter, Isaac did put out a video of the West Plaza, and it's looking great. And there you got Ethan.
How many instruments have you seen in the stadium so far? I mean, are there like a good amount or what?
We'll hear them soon. Noah's pulling out his binoculars, as you can see, to find instruments. I don't see any right now, so soon enough we'll find some. And we'll hear them too, unfortunately.
What's happening with first pitch, guys? Who's throwing it out?
Neymar.
That's probably the coolest.
The Neymar.
Wow,
That's gotta be one of the
I'm actually really excited about that.
It's got to be one of the cooler first pitches we've had here in a couple years, at least during opening day. Last year they had some rapper, I'm not sure who he was, but yeah, it should be cool to have Neymar here at the ballpark.
Has he been throwing any warm up tosses or anything? Like, have you seen him loosening up?
I haven't seen him at all. He'll probably come out towards closer to first pitch. The ceremony is actually about to happen now at 3:30. It says, so we'll see.
Yeah, good.
And I'm curious for your attendance predictions. I mean, it's cheating a little bit that you're there. I think the consensus is that this is not going to be a sellout given the time of day and given the opponent, all things considered, and what the prices looked like on the secondary market. But do you have a general idea, the two of you, in terms of what the final number is going to be when they announce it in like the 8th inning?
I'll say it's close to 30K. You got to go a little over. The upper deck still isn't fully sold out from what Noah told me, but it should get close to 30, over 30. I would say look back at the opening day against the Phillies in 2022, I want to say. I think we'll get something close to that. And it's going to be loud in here no matter what, especially with the instruments. So we'll see, but I'm saying over 30K tonight.
I think it's going to be either between 29 to 32. 29K to 32K, not 29 people. At least it's going to be 65. Jesus Luzardo has 65 tickets for his family, so we know it's at least 65. But yeah, even right now, there's a ton of people on the Budweiser balcony in the outfield. I know the entire lower bowl is sold out. I think the home run porch is like 80% full. The second level is somewhere around 70%, and I think it's about half full in the upper deck, from what I saw on the ticket website.
We'll take this opportunity to shamelessly plug our new Ultimate Guide to Loan Depot that went up just a couple hours ago on our site.
You can't have it with the roof open because that never happens.
Well, that was a picture that Kevin took, and I thought it was a good photo, so I wanted to use it in that. There's still, hopefully opportunity at some point during this homestand to use it to open the roof if things permit. Anything that, do you just want to give us a preview, Noah, about what people can find in this guide on our site and how it can make their attendance experience all the better?
Detailed information about the parking and the lack of transportation options to get here. Just the details on the bus routes and stuff that people don't really know about. The tricks to knowing which garage you should park in, depending on how you're getting out of your spread. Just general stuff like that, where you should enter for your different seats. You can enter anywhere to get anywhere in the ballpark. But just to make it easier, where all the concessions are, the dimensions of the field, which I find important, and just the general, pretty much anything you would want to know about the ballpark is in there. And if it's not, let me know and I'll add it.
Yeah. Well, I can use it myself. As you guys are aware, I make trips down for spring training, but I've been reluctant to go during the regular season. But this will be, for me, selfishly, I can't wait to refer to this when I'm next down there later in the season, hopefully.
And when will that be?
I don't, I don't plan stuff super far in advance.
Ever.
With any advance notice. We'll figure it out eventually. Yeah, I think well, you guys have a prediction video coming, you and Kevin and a couple of our
Yes.
other colleagues.
We
So
did
yeah,
we did a prediction video. So
yeah. So I will play that later. But I think that's gonna do it. Press box report with Noah. You can follow him at Noah Burger Media. Follow Kevin _ Baral, both of those guys on Twitter. Enjoy yourself, Noah.
I'll see you guys.
Our first press box report, pretty successful one, I would say, all things considered in there. Yeah, what else did we want to get to on the show? In about 15 minutes, we're having our final guest on, somebody that I don't think any of us have met before, so that'll be an interesting surprise. And that one's going to lean a little bit. That's going to have an interesting slant. We're going to talk a little bit about the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp, AAA Jacksonville, because all the guys that missed out on this Marlins roster, a lot of them went down to Jacksonville. So it gives us I think that's an interesting angle to it that we'll be looking at right here. But let me just see what other questions we have in the chat going on about our attendance. Yeah, see what that Neymar first pitch. I think the Marlins kept that kind of quiet in advance. Usually they tell us ahead of time like who's going to be there. I mean, they had all those,
sold some tickets.
Yeah, they had that whole campaign with hype with celebrities about Skip telling everybody to skip what they were doing to come to the ballpark. But I don't remember a Neymar video in there. I remember Udonis Haslem and Kevin Love, a couple celebrities that I actually did not recognize, but people told me that they were important people, even though I didn't recognize them to be important people. So I thought one of them maybe would throw out the first pitch, but doesn't turn out that way. Yeah. What else is on our minds with this team? 4-game series against the Pirates in here. Oh, I think I remember. I wanted to show one of Sean's mean opening day trivia questions that caught my eye earlier today that he put up on his Twitter account. Sean, why don't you read it for people in here and see if anybody's on the right track with this particular one, opening day themed trivia.
Okay, so reveal the two positions, you mean? There was actually a typo in one of them. I treated this out a little after the fact, but So it's one position that has the 7-year stretch. The other one was catcher that had a 6-year run of this happening, but there was a 7-year stretch where we had 7 different right fielders in 7 consecutive opening days.
When was that stretch?
I believe it was 99 to 2004. If that does not add up to 7, then we'll start in 98.
Oh, yeah, I know what we can
98.
do. Let me I'll just take a look at some of these past opening day lineups, and we can see if there's any patterns here. I'll narrow this down to since 2003.
98 is when it starts. 98 to 04.
Yeah, but I will take inspired by this. I'll just take a broader look at how things have changed through the years with this Marlins team. This was prior to today. Obviously, we had Sandy 4 consecutive starts as his opening day starter. What stood out to me that I knew was a possibility was that there's only 3 guys today in the lineup that were in the opening day lineup last year. It's only Jazz and Arise and Brian De La Cruz in there. As a couple of people mentioned, the decision to bench Avi, or at least platoon him, where he's not in the lineup against righties. Nate, now I think a lot of people were not enthusiastic about the idea that Avi was kind of given a roster spot, given his struggles the last couple of years. But I think what everybody's fascinated to see is how they use him, given the balance between where he is in his career, but what he's accomplished, but the fact that he's on the question of being how the Marlins were actually going to use him if he was going to be on the roster. And I guess, do you think there is any path for him to have some sort of significant bounce back if they are really strict with platooning him? If he's only playing against lefties, if they limit him to just really advantageous matchups, is that going to do much of anything to potentially get him back on the track? help the team salvage something from the last couple of years and the last $29 million of his deal?
Well, since he is here and the Marlins have to use him now, I don't know. They probably can't salvage much out of him, especially with, the amount of guys they have in the outfield now, especially with, Nick Gordon. They're keeping Dane Myers down now to use him. But I think if you get him against a lefty, he can platoon against them and get maybe some good at-bats. It's kind of like the old JJ Leday situation, waiting for him to turn the corner, and you really, like, every spring you kind of get excited for him. Well, not anymore really, but last year kind of got excited, but not really as much now. Like I said, if you can get him against a friendly left-handed pitcher, could see him get a lot of work, but not as good as he used to be defensively. Doesn't really, sprint speed's not really up there. Kind of just hoping we can get anything from him at this point.
This is a fascinating question. Team of 26 Jacob Stallings or 26 Avi Garcias? I think it has to be Avi, just because Stallings he's limited to catcher and emergency pitcher. But I think his defensive skill, his defense would not translate whatsoever to any other position. And for all of Avi's limitations as a base runner, I think he still gives you something, or he's not as much of a liability as other veterans. So Mega, I would certainly go with Avi if that is the choice that we're being given right here.
I don't know. You need pitching. Stallings on the mound.
Yeah. Well, Avi hasn't gotten any reps, but maybe he will this year. Well, we think probably Bethencourt is the most likely emergency pitcher of this group, right? Considering that he actually has pitched a number of times in relief. So I think that is actually going to be his role that he inherits. Peter pitching and Sean catching instead of having those two actually do it.
There's evidence on YouTube that suggests otherwise.
Yes, I remember that. That clip, I remember that must have been 5 years ago of you throwing.
Yeah.
How much baseball have you played since then in the last couple of years?
Absolutely none. I've hit a couple of times in those indoor fun batting cages where it's not like actual baseballs coming at you. It's like, sponge balls or something, you know what I mean? So yeah, I've never played the game properly. That was the only time I tried. It was fun, really fun. And what I soon realized was just how far it is from third base to first base. That was the main thing when you're doing those kind of fielding drills and you're trying to throw a ball to first base. Man, oh man, that is a long way. You don't realize that, and you just don't realize the skill and ability either. Again, it's just because it happens on the TV, it just looks so natural. It's automatic. But I can testify it is absolutely not automatic. And I wish I'd carried on playing actually, but I'm fully fledged into the tennis world now. So that's my new game, my new passion. I'm trying to get good at that. It's a hard game, probably not as hard as baseball, I would say, but yeah, it's a long time ago those clips.
And I did want to pick your brain. Also, you had a crossover episode with Locked On Pirates previewing this series. So I'm curious if there's, even though Austin was pretty thorough on a couple of subjects, is there anything else that was brought up in that show about the Pirates that you think is worth mentioning as it pertains to this matchup one way or another that maybe we haven't brought up yet?
Yeah, I think the one thing that we talked about specifically about this series is Andrew McCutchen being at 299 in terms of career home runs. And so there's eyeballs on that, I think specifically. I personally think that Kutch, this is a perfect series for him with the four lefties going. So, I'm interested to see how he goes. We'll probably talk predictions shortly. Kutch will probably be my MVP for the series, actually thinking about it. I think the Marlins could win it. Anyway, that was the main thing. Paul Skeens, he was very high on, and I think expected him up sooner rather than later. I think, with Austin as well, his views, this is probably the best Pirates lineup. I think this is the best Marlins lineup too. I think both of these clubs are ascending at this point, to be honest. Both lineups look the best for a long time. And it's the perfect time to have this graphic up. He was super high as well on O'Neal Cruz. So he feels like the Pirates version of Jazz, right? That's kind of where we're going to this, and the hype maybe surrounding these guys, and we'll see whether the production matches that. But yeah, it feels to me like there's still a couple of question marks over their rotation, to be honest, was the sense that I'd got. And clearly, they were trying to get Eddie Cabrera and maybe trying to add different arms. I think that's kind of the missing piece of the jigsaw at this point for the Pirates. It's going to get a little bit deep in the rotation. Obviously they're comfortable with Mitch Keller now at this point, but beyond that, I think there's a few question marks maybe. And so, for me, it felt like they're feeling buoyant, to be honest. And I think these clubs on paper and probably by the end of the year could have similar records, and probably considering I think the Marlins are going to win 71, the division the Pirates are in. Like, I think the Pirates will probably have a better year than the Marlins, actually. It feels like they're in that kind of like, I've been in a rebuild for many, many years, and they're just starting to now ascend to, okay, is the window starting to open a touch? We've got our youth. We've got the guys in the mix that we've drafted over the last couple of years, and feels like it's getting into go time, I would say, for the Pirates at this point. So I think they're going to be a fun team.
Yeah. I just remembered that Aroldis Chapman is on the Pirates. And it's quite a change from where it was a year ago when the Marlins had some interest in him. They saw him do a workout, and he ended up signing for only a couple million with the Royals, and then got traded to the Rangers. But he had such a good year between those two that this offseason he got like 11 mil. Like, he'd be by far the highest paid pitcher. I'm not right. He'd be the highest paid pitcher on the Marlins if the Marlins had signed him. But yet he goes to the Pirates, and these teams are almost in lockstep payroll wise entering this year. The Pirates are a team there where they've had consistency at the ownership level, but not in a desirable way. So even though the Marlins fans have been deprived of that continuity, the Pirates kind of lamented because their ownership, Bob Nutting, he's kind of notoriously thrifty on this type of stuff. And this is actually one of the higher opening day payrolls they've ever had. I think they extended Mitch Keller. And I wrote about that because Mitch Keller actually has a lot in common with Luzardo they check a lot of the same boxes, and even price wise. Like, I thought the Mitch Keller extension gave us a relatively clear idea in terms of what it would take to extend Luzardo, or at least set a floor for that. But yeah, it's the Pirates doing it, whereas Marlins haven't got anything close to done. Yeah, we should bring up that. Well, I'll ask Sean about the matter of extensions, because opening day is an unofficial deadline to get a lot of those done. This was a conversation throughout the entire offseason, but it really is like once you get to the very end, it's when there are actual negotiations going on. It's right as the season starts is when players want to focus on actually playing the games, and usually those conversations cut off. But if there's one extension that the Marlins could miraculously get done, that they've been keeping under wraps, and an announcement comes out in the next 40 minutes, or even if it comes out in the next couple of days that they extended somebody, which one would you be most satisfied about extending beyond their current years of club control?
Most satisfied, it would be Erie, easily. I'd love to see them lock up Yuri Perez to a long-term deal and keep him here. One of those, Braves type, announcements where we've locked up at a reasonable cost for years and years. If it's something that I think be most likely, it would be, of the three that I'd still be happy with, I guess it would be Luis Arias to pull that off. When the Keller news dropped, I kind of figured that price is out of Luzardo, because I think he might be slightly stronger as a pitcher, and I would have a hard time seeing the Marlins topping that by that much for at least that time frame. But Yuri Perez would be the easy answer for what I would just do cartwheels if the Marlins announced the news.
Yeah. Well, same thing to you, Nate, because I think there's a lot of different arguments to be made there. If they could get one extension done all of a sudden for the next couple of days, who to you would be the ideal guy to get that done with?
Completely agree with Sean on Erie, especially how you mentioned with the Braves. They got all their entire young core locked up for, it feels like, the next decade, and for reasonable money. Also, like Arias, if Jazz were to, if he's been healthy his entire career, I'd like to say him, but it's risky if you want to invest that much money into someone that has not played a full season yet. But completely agree with Sean. Most satisfied with Erie. That'd be very nice.
Yeah, and Peter, you have a different answer on that one, or you in alignment with them about Yuri?
with all the control that Yuri's got, like I'd prioritize someone else around that. I understand the point the guys are making, but for me at this point, like the organization's got a decision to make around Arias and Luzardo, and the history tells us that probably both may be moved at this point, which I'm not overly excited about, to be honest with you. So I mean, Arias he's very unique at what he does, and he's so important to this lineup, I think. And for me, like, it's critical. And the Marlins have really struggled to get any kind of hitters that are above average at the big league level. And so, listen, we've hit on one. We had to give away Pablo Lopez to get him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for me, it feels like the natural thing at this point is extend Arias, to be honest with you. And, I think this offense takes a massive step back if Arias isn't in it this year or in any future years. So I get where the guys are coming from. What Nate's saying is absolutely bang on. Listen, the Braves, whatever the Braves do, follow them. You want to kind of mesh the Rays and the Braves.
Right.
Like, they are the two organizations to follow. And the Braves, what they absolutely do so well is just lock in their young studs early as possible, because they've identified the talent. They know, and they're committing to them long term. Get it done. Players happy, clubs happy, fans are happy too. Feels like a win.
Yeah, and Peter, you've given us more for your time than we ever expected. This is 3 full Locked On episodes because I know you're pretty strict about that cutoff right around 30 minutes. So I'm glad that you had the stamina to make it this far, and you were a big addition here. Before we get you out of here, prediction time for you as well. If I have all this set up correctly, you know how this works at this point. Given a couple reps, how many games the Marlins will win this series MVP? The floor is yours.
Guys, I think the Marlins win this series. I think they win an opening day game as well, by the way, for the first time in what feels like a long time. So I think the Marlins win today, and I think they win the series. I think they win it 3-1. My MVP actually for the series is going to be Andrew McCutchen. I think he hits his 300th and 301st home run during this series for his career. So I think it's going to be a fun series for him, but the Marlins end up prevailing 3-1. They get it rolling, and then Max Meyer with the ball against the Angels. So I'm hoping for a fast start. I'm hoping for a hot start. I think that we get it rolling today. Eli, you're on mute.
I made it an hour and 32 minutes without ever slipping up in that regard. You can, of course, find Peter's stuff at Locked On Marlins, Miami Marlins _UK on Twitter or X. Have an amazing season, Peter. We will talk to you again very soon. And it lines up very well because you're kind of passing the baton to our final guest as it is.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Our final guest coming in, a first-time guy on here. I noticed his blog earlier this offseason, and it occurred to me just last night when I wanted to get the final guest spot that he'd be relatively perfect for this. Kevin Cooper from The Catch. How's everything going, Kevin? Happy opening day. His video is set up. Let's see if his audio is coming through. I see his smiling face.
There you go.
There it is.
There you go. Sorry, guys. It just keeps kind of cutting out on me.
That's all right. We can hear you just fine. So that's
Good.
The most important part on this.
Super.
Yeah. Why don't you just give us a little bit of background on you?
Sure.
I know that I've brought you in to mainly talk about Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp. So how long have you been following the Jumbo Shrimp closely?
So first off, thanks for having me on today. I really appreciate it. It's great to chat with you guys. And it was fun hearing from Peter previously. Like it says down there, I'm Kevin Cooper. We moved to Jacksonville from Chicago right at the pandemic at the beginning of 2021. And I love baseball. It's what I live for. And when we moved down here from Chicago, I needed to find a way to kind of connect with the city, and connecting with the Jumbo Shrimp was the easiest and most readily available thing that I had. So started the blog, started my Twitter feed, and go to as many games as possibly we can. My daughter, I have a 7-year-old daughter who loves going to the Shrimp. And it's great. So we really enjoy it. We've made a lot of friends at the stadium, at the club, and now we take and now we take a bunch of people with us every time we go. So trying to spread the gospel of Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp wherever we can.
Yeah, I was hoping to get an official roster for them before we went on there.
They never do. It was last season or the season before they sent out the official roster as I sat down in my seat for opening day. So I think they have to figure out what is coming to them from the Marlins and who might be coming up from Pensacola before they finally know. Because I was looking at the roster just before getting on here, and they have one catcher. So Johnny Peretta, and I don't think he's going to be the only guy that's there. So I think they have a few things to be ironed out.
Well, let's test your knowledge, because this is the roster, even though we don't have the names yet. I think these guys are on the team. How many of these guys do you recognize just based on
let's see here.
faces?
Tristan Gray, who I'm really looking forward to seeing this year. Troy Johnston, obviously. Who has become kind of a mainstay and one of the best players. I know Dane Myers is there. Xavier Edwards will be there. And there's a lot of new guys whose names I just don't know yet, simply because, again, looking at the roster, there seems to be a lot of pickups, especially in the pitching department, from other clubs and other organizations. But I know that at least two of the guys are Mesa Jr. and Victor Mesa. So that'll be fun to see them.
Yeah, let me see if Victor Mesa Jr. is in this particular pick, because he was optioned down there originally, and I think there was some question as to whether he was actually going to report there, whether they would send him back to Pensacola.
Yeah, he should. They need the outfield help. It should stick. Now, granted, since they've got Conine and Myers there, maybe they'll get some more playing time. But I kind of think Dane Myers is he'll be down for a bit and then back up with the club sometime soon. At least he should be.
Yeah. Well, you must be relieved, as you mentioned, a lot of new names on the pitching staff, that I think anything different would be better. Because last year wasn't a particularly good batch of pitchers that the Marlins sent there. Even their top guy, Yuri Perez, he skipped Jacksonville, both coming on up, and then when he went back down in the middle of the season. So I think there's nowhere to go but up in terms of the quality of pitching that you'll see there this season.
And I tend to agree. I think the Marlins are a lot like other ball clubs. They put their best talent at AA. We had Max Meyer through here at the beginning of 2022, which was fantastic. It was fun to watch him before he got called up to the big club. Unfortunately, got hurt. But that he was one of the big names that we came through here. He started opening day, and it was really, really fun to watch. But they seem to take, like Yuri, go to Pensacola, go to Miami, and kind of leave us in between with a lot of either 4A guys or pickups from other clubs that, for depth. Devin Smeltzer's a big example of that. Threw a no-hitter for Jacksonville last year, but played for Minnesota in the majors, is ready to could go up at any time, but they're probably not going to call him up unless they have a dire need. But he's a good fill-in for a AAA roster, and they pay him accordingly for that.
And how closely do you follow the big league team? What's your general actual forecast for how they're going to do this year compared to last year?
I follow. Just by following the Jumbo Shrimp a lot, you have to follow the Marlins because of the interplay between the two. I wish the Marlins paid more attention to the Jacksonville area and made more of an effort to let people know that the Shrimp are their AAA affiliate. They don't do a good job of that. So it leaves most people to be Braves fans in this area, which is a person I don't like. I don't like the Braves, period. But it's tough, especially when Gwinnett opens here tomorrow. It's going to be more Braves fans than Marlins fans sitting in the ballpark. That said, I'm a little unhappy with their progress. It seemed like they went for the super ultra conservative route for remaking their lineup. You lose Soler. How do you replace that power? I don't know that Avi Garcia is the answer for anything other than who's going to be released first. I was looking at the lineup today. I'm surprised Josh Bell is in the 2-hole. I think he did well getting a new environment coming over from Cleveland last year. But again, I don't know that he's a long-term solution. Jazz, I hope he does well in the 4-hole. I saw Peter made a 40-40 prediction for him, super bold, which I don't know if that's gonna be the case. If it is, and he's our Acuna, fantastic. I just don't know if that's the case. I think the team needs some more power. I think they've got to rise for on base percentage. I think they can do well if they learn to play some small ball as well as mix in the power when it comes. Question is starting pitching. Hopefully Sixto comes back and has a blinder, and Max Meyer comes back and on the back end of the rotation does well. Hopefully Luzardo will be able to step up and take that Alcantara position. I don't know, but it seems like Bendix and his crew are pulling people that they know from Tampa and from other clubs that are known entities and kind of trying to fill in some holes. But I don't know that they're long-term for the club for this season or this season beyond.
Yeah. There should be potentially a couple interesting rehab assignments coming through Jacksonville.
I hope so. We'll see. Again, it all depends on if they're playing at home or away, or sometimes it's a short one, they'll send them to Jupiter instead of coming up to us for a bit, especially if we're like in Scranton or somewhere far away where don't bother with it, because the team's not going to pay to fly to Scranton for 6 games when they can just have them at home. So we've seen that a couple of times, but that's all right. We're here to have fun and hopefully win some games. And we've got some really new great improvements coming to our ballpark coming next year. Mm-hmm. With Project Next. So hopefully that'll attract a new generation of fans, and hopefully that the buzz between the Marlins and the Shrimp can increase and get some more fans from a little further south of Jacksonville to come up and take a look at our ballpark, who happen to be Marlins fans, see the players of the future and enjoy what we have to offer.
Yeah, we were watching closely about a month ago when the full details of that were announced. The fact that getting support from the city to do that, which on certain levels of pro sports is becoming less common, where cities are sometimes not as enthusiastic to back that stuff. But it seems that the Shrimp are like popular enough there and having enough of a material impact that the city actually sees this as a good investment too.
They really do see it as a good investment, because there's so many events that can be held at the ballpark other than just a ball game. And I think that the prevailing sentiment is, if they're going to, I don't know how close you guys follow Jacksonville sports and Jacksonville politics, but there's a big move to spend $500 million up to $750 million on stadium for the Jags. So $30 million for the Jumbo Shrimp is a drop in the bucket, and I think that it's a good investment by comparison. It's a state-owned facility. So I think in order to make sure that they keep the Jumbo Shrimp past 26 deadline that Major League Baseball has imposed on ballparks, they really had to come up with something to move the ballpark forward to meet all those benchmarks. I know Jacksonville has the resources to do so, but I feel bad for some of the smaller towns that are going to have to try, and teams that are going to have to try and meet those benchmarks that may not have the resources. So we're lucky we have a forward-thinking mayor's office here that saw that this is something for the future, and if we really truly want to be a major league city, then we have to act like it.
For sure. Aside from that, I think we're almost ready for prediction time on here, where something that we do we've been doing these streams, Kevin, this is going to be our 4th season of doing them for every single series. And especially last year, we really fine-tuned the way that we do this, where we combine our predictions throughout the entire season. We track what our staffers say, what our guests on our stream say, what our paid subscribers say on our sites. Let me just show people what our super subs have so far. This is not a complete list. This is the ones that I gathered before we started this stream. And with this being a 2-hour stream, there's a couple I got to go back and record on here. But yeah, all these people either on our site, fishonfirst.com, or in our Discord server. This is what it always, early in the year, and especially when you start the year, it always skews way too positive than it should. And I guess it happened last year too, because last year, pulling all these wins out of their butts in late situations, that there was just so much optimism here. And for the most part, that's kind of why I didn't do as well as I thought I would, just because I was expecting the other shoe to drop at some point, and it just never really did. So there's not a single one, at least so far. I need to dig back and find the complete predictions. So far from our super subs, not a single one has the Marlins losing this series. All of them either a series split or the Marlins winning 3 out of 4. With this one, we've had a couple of predictions ready here on the show from, not a lot of them. We've had from Krutchik and from Peter Pratt and from Austin. And we still have a couple of videos to come right here that I'll play in just a moment on here. I guess with 24 minutes until first pitch, if people want to go over to the site or into our Discord channel, there's still time for you to submit and have those recorded, but we're going to be doing them every single series. So it's 50 something series in here. I guess, that's the last thing from your perspective, Kevin. That's one change on the minor league side, where they really standardized the scheduling when it comes to having series, all of them contained within a single week, and having that consistent Monday off day. I've talked to players about that at different minor league levels, and how across the board they see it as a slight win for them to have that really reliable day of rest and be able to schedule things accordingly. I mean, from the fan perspective, is it any different, or was it better or worse? Just the fact that now it's all Tuesday through Sunday every single week.
If it was, I understand why they did it, and I understand that there's cost savings involved. Doing, especially at the AAA level, doing 3 games in Jacksonville, followed by 3 games in Columbus, followed by 3 games in Norfolk, it adds to the travel costs for teams. So I understand from that standpoint. From a fan's perspective, seeing the same teams 6 days in a row, it gets a little dull. Tuesdays and Sundays especially are kind of boring. They really have to up the promotion games on those days and really pull people out. Friday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday seem to be the biggest days. But it's tough, especially if you see the same pitching matchup on a Tuesday and a Sunday. It's tough to see the same lineups, and when they roll over, them by the end of Game 6. Right. So it makes it a lot less entertaining. And for me personally, as a fan, I miss the minor league days of being able to. I've been to 60 of the 120 ballparks in minor league baseball. So I love it. I love traveling for games. And it's one of the things that my goal is in the next few years, get to all 120 plus whatever ones have closed. Being able to do an afternoon and an evening in 2 ballparks, and then have another afternoon and evening in 2 other separate ballparks and see 4 separate teams. You don't have that opportunity to do that anymore when everybody's playing in the same spot for an entire week. That said, it's not about me, the owners and their costs, their built-in costs, and then the money that the team has to pay for the players. So I get that. But I do find 6 games a little blah after, 4 or 5. It's 3. The 3 game and the 4 game series was perfected over 100 years for a reason, because that's about what you need to see each other and then move on to somebody else.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I've never even dared to imagine what it would look like in the majors if they went with the same.
That'd be the worst. That would be so bad. I mean, part of it is because it reduces, especially in minor league baseball, it reduces the number of teams that you see. There are AAA teams that the Jump haven't played yet. And this is now their 4th season in AAA. Even though we're in the International League, we haven't played Buffalo. We haven't played Rochester. We haven't played We just played Toledo for the first time this year. We haven't played St. Paul. So, we play entirely too many games against Charlotte, Gwinnett, Memphis, and Norfolk. They're the closest ones, and I get that. But again, when you see Norfolk it was worse in 2021, first season out from the pandemic. I think we played 30 games against Norfolk that year. And, you can only play a team so many times before it just gets ridiculously dull. And it would be nice if baseball was able to at least acknowledge the fact that you don't want to see them at all time, and maybe have a one series against a couple more teams than just the same old teams overall. But Major League Baseball would be terrible. If I were any fan and saw 6 games in a row against the Braves, the Phillies, the Nats, and the Mets, and then had to do the same thing on the road, you can't have a good balanced schedule like you would otherwise, and that's what they want to have.
Yeah, fascinating stuff on that. I haven't really thought much about it to this point, but I
think too much about these things. That's kind of the way the world is these days. Everything else seems really boring by comparison. Baseball is the thing that keeps us all going, right?
Yeah, this is time for the least boring segment that we do. With predictions on here. Every single series throughout this entire season, we'll be doing these. So we have first a video from the press box. Well, actually, this is from on the field with Kevin and Noah and a couple special guests. Let's hear what they expect from this 4-game set against the Pirates.
Alrighty, Marlins, Pirates, prediction time, opening day. I'll go first. I'm going to say the Marlins will split the series, and Jazz Chisholm Jr. is your MVP. Noah, you're up.
I'm going to say the Marlins take 3 games, and I think Jake Burger's going to be the MVP.
So I'm going to say the Marlins are going to split this series 2-2. My series MVP, Noah just gave me a stare. I didn't like that. No, my series MVP is Luis Arias, and I know I'm the last one. We have one more left, but I still want to say this. Back to you, Eli.
I would say the Marlins take 3 of these series, and my MVP is going to be Trevor Rogers.
Alex, back to you, Eli. Back to you, Eli.
And now, we already saw his prediction right here on the screen, but a special video from loud Miami fan Chase, one of our super subs. What does he have to say about these next 4 games?
Series prediction, 4-game set. Marlins are going to start off strong. They're going to get 3 of the 4. Don't know which 3 of the 4, but that's how we're going to start this season. And then the MVP. I'm going to go with Jake Burger and some burger bombs, series MVP of this opening series versus Pittsburgh. Thank you, Fish on First team. Continue what you're doing. And everybody watching, go super subscribe right now on fishonfirst.com. Let's get louder together.
Thanks a lot, Chase. But now it's, the grand finale. Just the 4 of us right here. Let me get my music queued up for everybody to enjoy in the background. There it is. So with this, I think you get the idea, Kevin, that we're just going to predict how many games the Marlins win on here and who the series MVP is going to be. It could be from either team in this aspect. But we're going to start off with Nate. He's been patient. He's been quiet. He has a lot to say on this one. So lead us off, Nate. Your predictions. Go ahead.
I got the Marlins starting the season hot, taking 3 out of 4. My MVP, no one's picked him yet, surprisingly. Former Pirate Josh Bell. I think he might have 2 homers this series. And we're going to start 2024 hot.
Sean, your predictions. Go ahead.
I'm going to say that the Marlins are going to split this series. Love a split in a 4-game series. As far as predictions go, kind of questions at the back end of both rotations. I think the Pirates have a deeper lineup, but the Marlins might have a little more upside pitching as we get into the back of that rotation. They're 2-2, and O'Neal Cruz is the series MVP.
And now, Kevin, for your prediction time debut, same as with these guys. What is your take?
Great. I think that it's going to be a series split 2-2. My MVP for the series is going to be Brian Reynolds from Pittsburgh. I think he's poised to have a big season. Pittsburgh needs his bat, and he's going to see plenty of good pitches from the Marlins staff. And even though it's going to be a split, he'll stand out from the crowd for the series.
And I will take us home right here. Thanks everybody for tuning in to this 2-hour special. And what you get from me is anticlimactic prediction. It's a series split. I almost always go with splits when it's an even number of games between the two teams. I should have showed this before, but I have a bet, a friendly wager with a smaller Pirates Twitter account that I had to change my profile pick to Andrew McCutchen. If I remember correctly, if the Pirates win the series, and then he does something for me if the Marlins win. But I think it's going to fall right down the middle, 2-2 on each side this way. And my MVP, Tim Anderson, in this case, he does get to face a couple lefties coming out of the Pirates rotation, and that is what the Marlins brought him in for, if nothing else. That's the floor on him, is if he's going to mash lefties the way that he did for most of his career until last year, then he's going to be well worth the deal that Marlins paid to get him. Is he going to be their everyday shortstop all season long? It's way premature to say that. I think he does get off to a pretty solid start. He has the blessing of Peter Bendix, some encouraging signs in spring training, regardless of what the overall numbers said. I think Tim Anderson is going to make a great first impression on Marlins fans in this opening series. And we made it through here. One of the longest streams that we'll be doing all season long, presented by Berger and Hicks, as always. Thanks to them for every single series throughout the entire Marlins season. And because that's the difference between Major League Ball and minor league ball, we have to do 50 something of these series previews instead of half the number that it would be if they did a week-long series. But this is always so much fun to do, and this is where the fun starts. We appreciate everybody that has stuck with us through this very I guess it's the same length of an off season as always, but I agree with Peter's sentiment that he brought up earlier in the show. It felt like a really long one just because of the lack of really impactful moves. But all things considered, it's a lot of familiar faces from a team that exceeded a lot of expectations last year. And every single day brings something really interesting, new going on around here. So you could keep up with that on fishonfirst.com. You can keep up with what Kevin's doing, particularly about the jumbo shrimp on The Catch. What he's doing there, covering that. I'm fascinated to read that because, frankly, I didn't know a whole lot of people across all Marlins affiliates that really know that their affiliate inside and out and go to a lot of those games. So I'm sure I will be checking in with you constantly throughout this year, Kevin.
Hope so.
And thanks to Sean for being here almost the entire show. To Nate for being on for literally the entire show. He's a very promising start to his internship with us here at FOF here in the 2024 season. And yeah, we'll stop just short of 2 full hours because I love to get these videos out before the first pitch of the season. We'll be back with more. Monday is going to be the next stream. There's so much coverage between now and then on our site and all of our various satellite accounts surrounding Fish on First. So we hope everybody takes a look at that. We urge people to be a super sub like Sean is himself. fishonfirst.com/subscriptions to sign up. But yeah, this is going to be every single season when you get to the start of it. Hope springs eternal with that, and there are always going to be surprises. And we are just getting started with that. So thanks again to everybody for the support, and go Fish.